What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Platinum Podcast, where we talk about all things gaming, all things trophies, and all things PlayStation. I'm your host, Lewis, also known as Platinum Bro. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Joel, aka Guy Fruski. How you doing, Joel?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Excellent. I'm good as well, matey. Good. So, we are joined by two guests, some reoccurring guests. The first guests to make their second appearance on the podcast, and it is Nathan and Dan from Platchums. Thanks for coming, guys. How you doing?
Great, yeah. Thanks for having us again. We're delighted to be back.
I can't believe you invited us back.
I know, I mean either, to be fair. I don't know what I was really thinking. I do really question my sanity numerous times a day. But never mind, alas. We'll move on. As we always do, we start our podcast by talking about what games we've been playing. I'm going to take a guess at Joel, what game you've been playing is still Persona 5, but I'm sure you can tell me more.
I don't want to. I've had enough. I've had enough of that game. I just really want to finish this guide, so I'd not never, but for now, not play it for a few months. Like, the backlog is getting bigger and bigger, and I'm just stuck on this one game. Even
though you've played a lot of hours into it, are you still thinking it's one of the best games going on the PS4? Or?
Yeah. I mean, the average person won't have to play it as much as I have, unless you want to make a guide, which... You know, it's up to you, but the average person will be I'd say about 150 hours for the plat.
And yourself?
So and me?
How many hours?
How many hours I've added? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd say the game hours, it's like on 130, but then adding like editing hours where I just have to edit things and add things and remove things, I'd say another 100 hours. I'm gonna say a wild number is gonna be around 250 hours in total of like just editing and playing the game.
You poor soul.
Jesus.
I know. I underestimated how long the game was. I'm gonna be honest. I thought I'm gonna take this week off and I'm gonna get it all done in a week. Like in this whole week, I've managed to do like a little bit of a Persona guide of like all the Personas. That's as much as I've gotten.
I don't envy you at all. What about yourself, Dan?
I've been playing through Ghost of Tsushima,
Nice.
One of my friends lended it to me, so I didn't have to buy it, which was great. But I'm under a bit like of a time constraint then, because I feel like I should probably give it back soon. So I'm trying to make my way through it really as quick as I can. But God, it's really long. I wasn't expecting it to be so long. I'm on like the second kind of map section, at the minute. I'm really enjoying it. I think I probably like burned myself out from maybe open world maps, maybe in recent times. So like some of the things I'm a little bit tired of, just kind of going here, taking this off the map, for example. But the game does so many things so right. Like the art style. The variety in collectibles, the way that they've implemented like nature to be the guiding force, is such a great idea, and the combat's very satisfying. And I keep thinking, oh well, that's kind of my full arsenal now. But then they add in like another little bit, which is cool. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. The story is really good so far. It's just that that huge map thing that I feel like I'm too old for, I feel like I'm too old.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, just going here, getting this shrine, getting this, You
should have a t-shirt that just says, I've cleared this game. I've cleared plenty of maps. I don't want to clear anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, great game. I'm really enjoying this. I'm excited to go on to the Legends mode as well, which I haven't touched. I wanted to finish the single player stuff first, so looking forward to that because it looks really cool from what I've seen, and it's really cool that they've supported the game after launch when it sold so well.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to be going for the 100%? Because obviously there's the New Game Plus trophies, and then there's the DLC co-op trophies as well.
Well, I'm kind of recently finished Days Gone, and I found that was a really long game as well. But at least in that game you could skip cutscenes, but you can't in Ghost of Tsushima. So I feel like if that's definitely, I don't know, is it the same for New Game Plus? Will they make me sit through every single cutscene and every, even the small ones? So if you go over to like a random person in the village and just want a hint about like where the next Mongolian camp is, you have to sit through the whole cutscene. So I'm hoping, like, if that was the case for the second playthrough, I wouldn't be jumping straight back into it.
I've heard that's the case.
Now
That was going to be my question. Can you still not skip cutscenes?
Yeah, you can't. As far as, you know, when you pause it or try to skip anything, it just, you know, gives you options for subtitles. It's like, no.
Oh,
That's so
it's
bad.
like the developers are saying, no, you have to enjoy and absorb the second playthrough. How dare you skip such excellence?
But
These
even
cutscenes cost us millions of pounds. You will watch them as many times as we say.
and I appreciate that, you know, because you do want, you know, the work you've got put into to be experienced by everyone, but there's just, you know, sometimes it feels like they don't respect your time, because you know, you don't need to see like the small cutscene of them walking from, you know, here to the shed. You know, you just want to skip that maybe and get on to the next exciting bit, or you don't want to hear them, you know, talk about something that you already know.
Yeah, all the exposition.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. So I like at least having the liberty of skipping a thing that I'm not particularly enjoying. But yeah, no. Other than that, really enjoying it. But yeah, maybe that reason might prevent me from going into like a second New Game Plus playthrough, just because I wouldn't be able to like fly through it by skipping the cutscenes, which would, you know, obviously shave off like 25-30% of the game. You know.
Yeah.
You piqued my interest with Days Gone. Have you finished the challenge mode, or have you just finished the 100% platinum side of it?
Actually, I finished the game. I finished like the first run through of all the challenges. I got like a bronze or silver on all of them, and then I kind of had my fill at that moment. So I gave the game to my sister. So she's playing through it now. So maybe when she's done, I might pick it back up and go for that 100%. Because I like the fact that a lot of them are the ultra rare trophies on PSN profiles. So that'd be cool. You know, I always like getting ultra rares if possible. So, you know, I know from what you've said that they're definitely pretty intense, especially the motorbike ones. But I might come to you for some tips and see.
I will try my best. It was a while ago, and I sort of like repressed it, so I'll have to like bring it up again to tell you. But what about yourself, Nathan?
Well, I got a nice juicy platinum. I finished Gree, or Gris, depending on your preference for pronunciation. So that was kind of a nice little game, kind of a break from the larger games I've been playing. I've hit a wall with Red Dead 2 and Tony Hawk 1 and 2. So I'm at 97% in both of them. But it's just the story missions in Red Dead and the level 100 in Tony Hawk 1 and 2. So I kind of loaded it up after Vicarious Visions kind of gave a new patch to the game. So they've added new challenges and you get more XP in Tony Hawk's, I mean. So kind of I did the more accessible challenges, so I'm like level 78 or something. But then I'm just like, nope, they're going to release another update. I'll come back to it, because I don't have it in me anymore to do the monotonous, repetitive grind where you load up a level for 10 seconds, you quickly do 3 special moves, then you end the run and you restart, and you just do that for hours on end.
That sounds like a really, really fun platinum trophy.
Oh god, it's so joyous. But so the game I've kind of been playing most this week is actually Days Gone. So I finished the story, which felt both too long and abrupt, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to clean up the trophies on that save. I'm actually going to go straight into the New Game Plus, so Survival 2, because everything carries over. So I just need to finish, I think, the Marauder camp. I think the Marauder camp and, you know, the Exterminator, they're the only ones that don't carry over. So for me, I'm going to psychologically trick myself into thinking I'm killing 2 birds with 1 stone, do the New Game Plus, get those 2 gold, silver trophies done, and then get the platinum as well. So that's kind of what I've been playing, really.
So that's for the 100% though, not the platinum.
Not the platinum.
Okay.
Now, I could just stick with this save file and get the platinum, but I kind of looked up, what carries over into the New Game Plus, because I know I'm going to go for the 100%. It's a disease I have,
I have it
So
too.
I don't.
I just saw that it's only those kind of 4 main side missions, those
Yeah.
progress that don't carry over, but kind of your collectible progress and like your upgrades, your weapons, all that kind of stuff carries over.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, okay, if I just kind of quickly shoot those crow's nests, I'll just go straight into the new game and just get the platinum while I'm also working on the DLC trophies.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to trick myself into thinking I'm taking some kind of shortcut, but I'm not.
But it wouldn't make anything more difficult on you though if you have to do them on Survivor difficulty. Then, for example, would it?
Well, yes and no. I guess that I'll have so many upgrades. Now, the only thing that might be a detriment is in Survival 2, I believe there's no fast travel.
There's not, no. Bike only.
So
God.
I haven't even got the 50% collectible trophy yet. I think I only need like 4 more, and then I think to get the 75%, I think it's like 40 more than that or something.
It might be worth doing that one first.
Yeah, just while I can fast travel.
Yeah.
So I might just make a point of doing that first and then going into it, because I was thinking of that last night because I was just finishing up all the kind of exterminator sites, where you need to kill the nest or burn them. So we'll see. It's just about juggling it. But the game, I actually thought it got so much better as it went on, and that I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything to people that haven't played it, but it's quite an old game at this point. But that epilogue cutscene just blew my mind. With
the researcher.
Nero,
Yeah.
the researcher.
Yeah.
I was like, that is a much more interesting game. What the
Why
hell?
wasn't this the first game?
Yeah, so I thought that was actually a very kind of unique, interesting twist that I wasn't really expecting.
So do you think they're going to make
To be
a
fair-
Days Gone 2 then? Is that what you're saying? The
I
ending,
think
it kind
that-
of opens up to something else.
Yeah,
I would have said so.
Okay.
yeah, like I think it sold pretty well. Like it wasn't like a real Sony heavy hitter.
Yeah.
Especially initially, with the performance issues and everything. But I think as time has gone on and the patches have been kind of applied, like I think it's a very solid game. Like it's a very good game, and it's so long. It's definitely one of the longest Sony first party games out there.
I do still want to play it.
Games.
It's just
It's about 40 hours just for the stories. It's quite long.
Yeah, like I was kind of thinking it feels more like a long form TV show as opposed to like the big cinematic movies that some of the other Sony first party games feel like. Like that really took its time with the characters and the world. And I kind of, the more it went on, the more I started to appreciate that kind of side of it, that it was kind of very patient in its storytelling, and that epilogue probably wouldn't have had the same effect if it was so rushed. They slowly built up to it. So there's a lot to love in the game. Is it the best game ever? No. Just no. But it's a very, very good game.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the horde mechanic is something that is really, really... The problem with that is the horde mechanic is amazing. It's really good fun. We've never seen anything like it. It's just the fact that you don't get to do one until 25 hours into the game, and then you start doing a lot more. But it's sort of like it takes so long to get going. A lot of people may have dropped off and not even got a chance to experience the horde mode properly.
Yeah.
But that's also why the challenge mode's so good, because half the challenge mode are hordes, and they're giant hordes. And I think the hordes are actually, they're never ending, the hordes on the challenges, so you can just keep going fighting this horde and they just keep coming in waves.
I think my PS4 is crying at the performance that it has to get to keep generating hordes.
I completely agree though. It's definitely like the standout bit of the game is when you have your full arsenal and then you get to take on the hordes. It's just a completely different game then.
And I love that it's never easy. Like you need to stay vigilant the entire time, and it could take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to defeat some of the hordes. So I love when they started actually implementing them in the story, because they were always just in the background, and anytime you saw one, like I just hopped on the bike and ran away, just but yeah, that's pretty much what I'm working on. So hopefully in the next week I might have the plat. We'll see.
Fingers crossed for you. That is the
crossed.
thing, was the game I played most last year, at about 160 hours, so it is quite the commitment to get the 100%. The platinum's about 50 hours, but it's just playing the game again, and then the challenges are just brutal. Some of them you have to do like hundreds of times. I did anyway.
Yeah, I remember you left a comment going, "Oh, look at you thinking the challenges would be a breeze," because I as soon as I said that in that video, I had like your force ghost behind me going, "Oh, you know not of what you speak, young Padawan."
How naive of you.
Yeah, what a fool.
Just you
Go on, Dan.
could just like read that comment every time you fail one of those bike challenges, just to
Yeah, every time I fail, load up a comment, look at it, and just kind of like just soak it in, soak in my own ignorance.
Alright, we'll finish this section off, and I'll tell you quickly what I've been playing because I don't want to delve on it too much because I'm going to be doing a review of it. And that is, I've just finished today my second playthrough of The Last of Us Part 2. I've just finished the permadeath playthrough, which, just for the record, on the easiest difficulty is easy. Like, I didn't die once playing the whole game when I knew, like, it wasn't even the fact that I knew everything because I hadn't played the game for 6 months. And I don't want to say too much about it because obviously everyone knows The Last of Us Part 2 is, it's just surrounded by this, like, sort of debate as to whether or not the story's good or not. I think playing it around the second time, I liked Abby more. And I think the second time round, it just sort of showed to me that the major issue with the game is the way it's structured and the way it's told, not the actual story.
I agree.
So I think I just do not think the way they did it in terms of, like, you play as Ellie first, then Abby. I just don't think that works. And if anything, it just sort of keeps you in the dark. You don't really know what's going on. You don't know what the actual characters are thinking because they hold back all this information till the very end of the game. So it just seems like it's like they're so obsessed with, like, shock value that they don't want to give you, like, a coherent story.
Yeah, the shock came at the expense of the story. Like, I agree with you with the structure because I remember talking to Dan about this, that I feel like if they were going to commit to having a new character, I would have loved if Naughty Dog just promoted Abby and you didn't actually know that Joel and Ellie, because before, like, any word of a sequel came, they always said, oh, the world has so many characters and possibilities, not just Joel and Ellie. So I would have thought that, you know, a lot of it, like, the story would need to be reworked a lot because I feel like the main motivation is to retroactively go back and show how, like, violence affects people and kind of to then kind of break down why Abby did what she did. But I think just to slightly twist it and have Abby's story told first and then for Ellie to come into it and have some way where you don't know who Abby is looking for, and then at the midway point it's Joel. Can you, like, I thought that would have been so good. But look, I'm not a narrative designer of a video game, so what do I know? But I do feel like that there is such a good story in there and it was just kind of told in not the best way possible.
I find it really funny that you said, I'm not a narrative director, so what do I know? And I feel like the people who work on that game clearly would not have any sort of qualifications in narrative direction, I feel personally, because I think some of the stuff is really well done and some of the stuff is like, when you really break it down, you're scratching your head thinking, this just wasn't the right way to display this, unless the only thing they wanted to tell people was to shock them, to the shock value. And so...
Yeah.
Dan, you've been a bit quiet there. I know you love Last of Us. Do you want to chime in?
You just see the red just go down.
I think
the mist.
I know. I agree. You know, I think the story is pretty hit or miss. You know, and it's all, you know, underpinned by did the events of the start, did the Joel incident, you know, resonate with you, and then, you know, were you able to empathize with Abby? And it kind of, you know, if you didn't take to Abby, I think the story kind of falls apart there. So there's a lot, you know, riding on the Abby character being well received. Look, you know, I think they wanted to tell their story, and they didn't care what the fans thought. They didn't care what, you know, what anyone else thought. They just wanted to tell their story, and they did. It's a really tricky one. I don't want to you know, start any kind of, you know, in-depth discussion about it. It worked for me. I really enjoyed it myself. And because I personally I liked the Joel thing at the start. I thought it was a really good way to kick the game off, and I know a lot of people were the opposite, but I think that had the game not been spoiled before it got released, we might be having a little bit of a different conversation about the game. I think because people went in with the knowledge. Yeah, I think maybe it was a little bit different, the outcome. But yeah, you know, I think I completely agree with all your points. I think I can completely see that. It's just when I was playing it, I just remember when I was playing as Ellie, and then of course it shifted to Abby, and I completely avoided all spoilers before the game. The only thing I knew that happened was Joel, because that got spoiled in a thumbnail for me. But everything else I didn't know about Abby at all.
Wow.
I really made it like an effort to not let it get spoiled on me. But when then you shift to Abby, I was like, wow, this is crazy. And then when I got back to the theater as Abby, I just thought that was one of my favorite moments of it was definitely one of my favorite boss fights of all time. I just thought that was such a cool dynamic, because I was like, no, I don't want to fight Ellie. I love Ellie. You know, it was a really clever way of, you know,
framing the kind of conflict.
Yeah, I thought so.
It was it was interesting. You're right. We'll not get into an in-depth topic today because we've got a lot of stuff I want to talk about. Maybe at some point down we'll kind of an in-depth topic of discussion about it, because I would like to have one. But I agree with that. Like I said, the second time I watched it, played it, I resonated with Abby pretty much. I didn't the first time because I felt like I just wanted to. I know people criticize it being too long as well, and I don't agree with that personally. I think it could have maybe been with Ellie's section could have been shorter, and I think Abby's could have been stayed the same or maybe been a bit longer, because the game is it's trying to make you like Abby, so to cut her sections down would be like counterintuitive to the point of the game. But I did find that Ellie seemed more like the villain the second time round, as opposed to Abby. But they're both very, very similar people, and it is just perspective as to who's in the right, because neither of them really are in the right about it. But alas, we'll move on.
Yeah,
it's a never-ending discussion. That's the problem. It's sort of like it's like on a level of like it's like a philosophical debate at this point.
I feel like we'll still be discussing this game in 20 years, and whether or not that's a good thing, it shows that it left an impact.
Yeah.
So
I also think as well maybe that this could be. I'm saying this now, which I was going to mention in my review, which it's going to be on this video now. That if this could be the Empire Strikes Back of The Last of Us, in the sense that Empire Strikes Back is so dark. You know, Han Solo gets frozen. Spoilers. Sorry if I spoiled this 40-year-old movie for you. You know, Luke loses his hand. It's sort of like really bleak. It ends really badly, and then it obviously it's completely different in Return of the Jedi. Maybe
Ewoks arrived.
Yeah, exactly. More dogs on The Last of Us Part 3.
Yeah,
but
JJ is obviously the Ewoks. You know.
Yeah. So we'll move on to our main topic today. So this is the PlayStation 5 is out in the US. We are Ireland above and England here, or UK even, and we don't have access to it yet, sadly. Dan is the only person who's got it pre-ordered of the four of us, so he'll be the only person getting it next Tuesday. Tuesday's in the day this podcast comes out, I believe. No, is it the Thursday, isn't it? It's Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
19th.
So the day this comes out, the podcast comes out, it'll be 2 days off the PlayStation 5. So we thought what we're going to do is our topic of the day is our games of the generation. So I assigned a task to all the gentlemen on this podcast about 4 or 5 days ago to have a long think, have a big cup of tea, whatever you're drinking, and just look out in the distance and just really contemplate life and contemplate the game, your game of the year. So these might be the same. We don't know what each other have chosen. The rules are we're allowed to give our game of the year and one special mention if we can't decide. One secondary. Who would like to start, gentlemen?
I'm intrigued just to see what everyone else says, because
I'm the same.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, let's get a little window into this.
Maybe Dan should start, since he's
Dan. I wonder what
he's the special one that's got the PS5.
Yes.
Maybe he can sort of start it off to then move on to the next generation before we do.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So game of the generation, it's such a great question. It's a really, really hard one. I was scanning my list, trying to figure out, trying to remember what I've played and what was part of this generation, because it's been such a long generation that there's games at the start that I completely forgot or even considered this generation. And then there's some games that I thought were in this generation but were actually in the PS3 generation, which is funny. GTA springs to mind. That game has been with us for so long. Okay, so my game of the generation, I'm going to pick a Sony first party, because I feel that that's obviously the most logical thing. But I'll give a special honorable mention to a third party one. So my game of the generation is Bloodborne. and I say that as a huge Souls fan. Ever since Demon Souls came out, I went to remember going to my local game. We had a game store in the city where we were in college, and this guy told me about this game, and he was like, because we used to chat all the time about new games coming out, and he was like, there's this game that's out in Japan, and it's just like the hardest game ever, and you just get killed all the time. And he told me that there's this boss at the start, and you just get one shot. But he said you can take off all your armor and just start rolling around him and chipping away. And it'll take you like 20 minutes to kill him, and but you can kill him. And I was going like, wow, that sounds great. So I looked it up, and it was Demon Souls, and I saw that it had a Western release very shortly. So I was super excited. So I ordered the special edition, and I was just in love with the game when I played it. I really, really loved it. So much so that I went out and I found all the like spiritual predecessors of the game, also made by From Software. So I got a few of the Kingsfield games as well, on the PS2. There's one on the PS1 as well, and I played them. And it's basically like a really bad version. Like it's a first person view, really bad version of the Souls genre, but it's a lot of the stuff is the same, you know, it's the same kind of methodical combat. But anyway, to get back to it, I've loved the series since Demon Souls, so I'm obviously very excited about Demon Souls coming out next week.
Which you already have.
I actually have it here as a prop.
You're just
Show the
showing
front.
off
Come on,
now, Dan.
let them see the front of the box.
Wait, there's a sticker on the front that
could be anything.
Yeah.
It could be any game.
Sticker off, right?
I've got it as well.
It's just Avengers.
So that's it. So I actually another very aside is that I was a bit disappointed with the PlayStation 5 box that they didn't like dramatically change it. You know, it's just that white strip.
I like the white.
Yeah, no, I do. I like
together.
it, but it's just
It's fresh.
It looks so similar to.
It's just like the
the other
logo, though,
ones.
isn't it? Do you remember the meme about the logo? It took so long to figure out how they're going to do the PS5 logo, and it's literally just delete the 4 and add a 5.
Yeah.
That must have been the shortest meeting ever. Will we use the same font? I don't know.
Yeah, why not?
So
Let's break for lunch.
I picked Bloodborne then because I think that it was such a bold move of Sony to go, let's get From Software to make us a first party game, you know, when they're not a first party studio and they've had such great success since Dark Souls, you know, especially on the Xbox. There's been a huge market there, so I thought it was really, really ballsy of them to just go ahead and like create their own Souls game, but also it being its own game and such a different game at that. When I saw, you know, the kind of Lovecraftian, you know, medieval mix, I thought it just looked awesome. And when I played it, you know, it lived up to every expectation. It was just as difficult, it was just as dark, but it was also so different at the same time. So it's such a dynamic game. You know, I know I don't like that word, but it just feels right. You know, it's the fact that it's moved from like the defensive to the offensive in a way. I just thought it worked so well, some of the decisions, so it really set itself apart from the other Souls games. And yeah, I loved it. I've played through it so many times. I just recently replayed it there to get through the Old Hunters DLC as well. It's just a game I keep coming back to. I love all the Souls games, but I think the fact that was a Sony exclusive was just such a great advantage to the whole console. So yeah, I think looking at it holistically, it's probably my favorite game of the generation, and actually one that I nearly forgot was part of the generation because it came back, you know, over 5 years ago.
Yeah, 2015, wasn't it? Did anyone else, when he was talking about that, the guy in the game shop, just envision this like guy with a long black trench coat on, like trying to like sort of like just get people in to like sort of say, guys, have you heard of this new game?
Did you ever
this
watch
really hard
Games,
game?
Phil? You know the gaming guru that lived in the attic with
No.
the hood? He was like a monk. It was this English gaming channel or show that I used to watch. I always picture the games guru, and he would always like just remember the sections. Dan, did you watch Games, Phil? Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so cheesy. It was like, oh, if you go up, down, left, right, square, circle, you will unlock all weapons. Oh.
Well, this guy was a real hero because he didn't expect me to buy it from there either. He was just like telling me about it, and he said, I think you can get it on Amazon, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, you know. So he was a pure gamer at heart, you know. He was just into sharing the knowledge. He didn't care about.
I'd love as soon as you walked away, he just calls From Software. I got another one.
Yeah.
I do think that Bloodborne, being a PS4 exclusive, did maybe pique a lot of people's interest to try Dark Souls. It did with me anyway. I played Bloodborne before I played Dark Souls, and I think Bloodborne teaches you how to play Dark Souls because, like you said, you're a lot more on the offensive. You can't really be on the defensive, to be fair, unless you're a dodge god. But it does encourage you not to, you know, because in Dark Souls you can kind of just hide behind a shield. Mm-hmm. In Bloodborne, you have no shield, so you have to be aggressive, and you have to be. It kind of rewards you because if you hit someone after you get hit, you recover some health. So it does encourage you to be a lot more aggressive rather than Dark Souls. So I think it piqued a lot of people's interest into trying the genre. Because I think a lot of people when they hear Dark Souls, when I heard Dark Souls, I thought it was a bit too intimidating. Mm-hmm. Because of what people were saying, like it was really hard to get into, and you need like to dedicate a lot of time in order to get used to the mechanics, which you do. But I think Bloodborne kind of gives you a quick tutorial. It kind of makes you get the mechanics faster.
Yeah,
it's a bit more accessible, I think.
Yeah,
but yeah. I think it's a great point because Nathan is a really good example because he played Bloodborne first and then he went to Dark Souls, and he was like really good at Dark Souls then, because it was like you would never play Dark Souls the way you would play Bloodborne, but if you go the other way around, you go into Dark Souls being like, oh, I don't need this shield, you know, and just
exactly.
jump at them. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So Dan, you said you had a third party.
Yes.
My honorable mention, and I've kind of chosen this because I wanted to pick one that maybe not everyone else would pick as well, because I didn't want there to be too much overlap, because there was definitely some standouts there, but one of the games that I've personally loved just so much is Resident Evil 7, and I say that because I think it did so much right. So I suppose I've always been a big Resi fan. Ever since I think I was like 7, and my dad brought home a Resident Evil director's cut, and I was like, oh, this looks cool, and I was like completely terrified of it. But
a psychopath was born that day.
Yeah, I loved it, but it was so scary.
Even the acting.
There's the dogs and the birds flying through the window and stuff. Oh, but yeah, I persevered. Got over those nightmares. Resi 4, definitely one of my favorite games of all time. Then we've got Resi 5, which was not as great, but still a good experience. And then Resi 6 was just, to me, it just didn't hit the mark at all.
I agree.
So when Resi 7 came out, the fact that it was like such a reboot of the series, yet it kept so much that was like special to the series. I thought that was just, it really gave me faith back in the Resi series. It also came out at the same time as the VR came out, so the fact that I had a full game to play in VR, and it was the scariest thing. I was there, like, I had to have someone in the room with me to play through this game. It was so scary.
Hold your hand.
Like, and it's so weird because you're like, it's fake, it's not real, but your brain is going, don't walk there, it's just too scary. So what I did was I got the game, I started it in VR. I was like, I had my wife there, and she was like, hold my hand, and I was like, oh yeah. Was trying to get through the game. I got to like just past the kind of opening tutorial-y mission bit, and I was like, no, I can't do it. So I had to take it off. I just put it aside, and I was like,
and burned it.
So I played through the whole game normally then on the screen. I didn't play through it on VR, and then I went back and I played it on VR after I knew kind of where the jump scares were, because I was too chicken. So I really loved the game as a whole. I thought it was excellent. The VR added a lot to it. But then as well, the DLC that came out afterwards just kept me really interested in it and kept me coming back, because I kind of had like a long break between the DLCs. And Nathan helped me with one of them in particular, the Joe Must Die one, you know, the where you play as the uncle. And each DLC was so different than the main game as well, and it was just such great fun. There's one with the uncle. There's one as Chris Redfield, which was free DLC.
Legend.
I think. Yeah,
I knew you'd like that one.
and and then there's even DLC where there's kind of more like mini games in it. So I just thought the game was so polished. It offered such a great experience. It kind of saved the Resident Evil series, in my opinion. And then of course we had the Resi 2, which was amazing too. So yeah, I think, you know, when I think about like my favorite third party game, I think that was probably it for the generation.
Yeah.
Solid choices.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right.
I think Resident Evil, they did the same mistake as what Dead Space did, and they stopped being a horror.
Yeah.
Like from the leap from the 5 and 6 is a lot. It's not a survival game anymore. It's just an action game with some zombies.
Yeah, it is.
And then I think they brought it back in giving you like a very helpless character in 7, so that you feel that, you know, the real terror. Because with Chris Redfield, and even in 6, I've not played 6, but from what I've seen, you don't really feel helpless. You've always got like a big gun, or you got, you know, Chris Redfield's bazooka fists.
Yeah, that's true, exactly. He could punch.
Where you're never really in like a lot of danger. Like in 7, I've not played it again, but from what I've seen and what people have said is you're literally just a normal dude, and you're just basically clinging on to dear life.
Yeah.
7
And I
is
think that's what
excellent.
brought back Resident Evil
The
again.
Madhouse difficulty as well is it changes the game up so much
Yeah.
that it's like a different game. So you know, they move around things, items and stuff like that, but just the way that, you know, Jack interacts with you and stuff, it changes everything
Really
up.
changes it,
Yeah.
yeah. And the DLC is some of the most challenging trophies I've unlocked this generation. Like that 100% it's a different animal. Like it's very difficult because there's so many like as Dan said, so many different mini games, so many different modes.
Yeah.
You need to dedicate yourself to that game, and you need to keep
Properly master
relearning
it.
new ways to play it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, who won? We'll go with Joel. Do you want to prepare? Are you prepared to tell us your game of the year?
I have prepared, actually, yeah. I've also got 2. I was a bit, I didn't know what order to put them in. They're just really good games, and I just didn't know which one I prefer because of how good they are. One of them was going to be Bloodborne, but I did have a backup. Just in case. I was expecting either one of the Platchums to say
Not me.
Bloodborne or a Souls game. So my backup from Bloodborne is Sekiro. And I think Sekiro was kind of one of those games where most people who picked up Sekiro had played Bloodborne and Dark Souls, and it kind of just slaps you in the face and tells you, like, whatever you know, forget it. You're starting from scratch, whether you want to or not. But apart from that, even from the challenge itself, the game itself, like the setting, being a shinobi, the bosses, just everything in general is just such a good game. Like, straight from the start, it had me hooked. Even though I struggled with the first couple of bosses, trying to get with the mechanics and everything, I just couldn't put it down. I just couldn't play anything else until I passed what I was stuck on. It's a very, very, very good game. Anybody who hasn't played it, I'd highly recommend you play it. Especially if you've never played Dark Souls, then I highly recommend you play it more, because you won't have any bad habits. And it's just a game that everybody should experience.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is probably my runner-up.
So again, realistically, Bloodborne is your game of the year, but Sekiro was your second.
I don't know. Both of them had like the same
God
kind of impact.
tier level.
Yeah, like Bloodborne, like I said before, is what got me into the Souls genre, because if I didn't play Bloodborne, I most probably wouldn't have played Dark Souls. So that kind of catapulted me into like trying the genre as a whole. But then Sekiro, I think the setting was more what kind of lured me in. Like Sekiro, when they announced it, I was hoping, like that little teaser trailer, I was hoping it was going to be Bloodborne 2. And then when it wasn't Bloodborne 2, I was really disappointed. And then I saw more of Sekiro and I started getting more intrigued. Like, I'm into like a lot of Japanese stuff. I like their culture, like especially the history and everything. It's really, really interesting. Samurais and ninjas is just...
Just very, very
it's-
interesting.
it's-
I agree.
it's very-
Just
it's
badass,
very,
isn't
very
it?
big.
It's
Yeah,
badass.
yeah,
Badass.
It's very,
My
very,
PSN
very
name, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's either one. I mean, they're both on the same level, but I think because I was expecting somebody would choose Bloodborne, I kind of had like a backup, and Sekiro was the backup.
Fair enough.
The game that I think surprised me the most, and it had so many different elements just pushed into one game and made it work, was Nier Automata. Or Nier Automata, I don't know how to pronounce. I think it's Automata.
I think it's Automata.
But Nier Automata it just blew my mind. I kind of picked up the game expecting one thing, and I just got so much more. Like it's got obviously the combat is amazing. The world is just, although it looks kind of plain, once you get to like the different areas, it just feels like something new. The story is just incredible. You get different sections of like different gameplays. So you've got like the hacking section where you kind of play, like the old school 2D like shooting games, with spaceships. You got some of that in there. You've got a ton of different endings, like all the way from A to Z, the alphabet. That's like an ending.
Wow.
So you've just got so much that you can do with the game. You can play it however you want. You've got you can customize your character to have chips. So if you really want an easy experience, you can get these auto chips, and you can basically just control the player, and it dodges on its own, it attacks on its own, it heals on its own. So you can experience the game however you want, really. You can really give yourself a challenge, or you could just cruise through it and just enjoy the story. And I think it just blew my mind on how good it actually was.
I've heard a lot of really, really good things about Nier Automata. I've heard it just being like this, like you finish it once and it's like the game's not over. You have to play it again.
Yeah,
I haven't played it, but obviously it's just what I've been told.
Yeah, I have.
You can also buy trophies.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
You can literally buy trophies from the shop. Like
Wow.
you to get the true ending, you have to do like the 3 real endings, and then after you do that, or on the 3rd playthrough, you unlock this shop. And if you've been saving up the actual game currency, so you don't pay with your own money, it's not like a microtransaction.
No.
It's like in-game currency. You can actually buy the trophies instead of unlocking them by
Bizarre.
playing.
Bizarre. Alrighty, we'll go on then. We'll move on to our third.
They're great choices,
Third.
so Joel. It was really good.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
good
agree.
choices. Interesting choices as well. Quite
And you're going
different.
to choose a From Software game. I just wasn't sure which it was going to be. I thought it was going to be Bloodborne. I didn't think you would have said Sekiro. But interesting to see that they're both very similar. You held them both up there. I think they both look so good, and they're like completely different from each other. But the art style, the world they've built, the characters, and the bosses are just so unique. Like you just don't see that sort of development anywhere else in any type of game. And I have to sort of like compare it to other sort of games that just purely on art style alone. Like I'm gonna slate Resident Evil here and say Resident Evil make a lot of odd villains, but it's like they're like laughably poor, especially Resident Evil 6 and 5 compared.
It's almost
to,
charming.
Yeah, it is. It's charming in a way that it's like laughably bad, but it's just funny that like other developers. It's like Bloodborne is an example of like how really, really bizarre like enemy designs can be made well.
Oh, for sure. And the thing with Bloodborne is there's lore. Like they don't put something in the game just because they want to put it in the game. Like every single thing they put in the game has lore behind it. Like every single item, every single weapon, every single enemy, every single boss, every single thing on the actual game has a lore behind it that connects it to something else, or it has a lore that this is why this is here, and this is why you're picking this up, and this is why you have to use this. It's just it's a world that's just so well made and just so well thought that like when you're playing it, you kind of find it hard sometimes to figure out what's going on. But then once you kind of go really deep into it, it's like I don't even know. It's like everything is connected in some way, shape or form. It's just amazing.
It's like a
But I have to
story
say,
that you discover.
Between Sekiro and Bloodborne, though, Bloodborne is a lot more mysterious. Sekiro is kind of more like it does tell you what is going on and why things are happening. Bloodborne, it's kind of, it makes you think a little bit, and also it gives people their own interpretation of what's going on. Like the endings are kind of, like the easy ending, should I say, which is where you can skip the last boss fight. Like that cutscene alone, it makes you think of what you've just been through. Like, is it a dream? Is it another world? Is it another dimension? What's going to happen afterwards? It kind of leaves it like very, very open.
Yeah.
So I think Bloodborne is a lot more mysterious in the storytelling department, for sure.
I love the way it shifts from that, kind of more, the Lovecraftian kind of thing to the kind of cosmic. Then in the second half, look, it just gets it gets a bit nuts. But yeah, exactly.
It does. Yeah.
There's it's its own world. The fact that it's a standalone game and there's no other entries in the series. Yet there's just so much lore there. There's so much that you could unpack, and it's like, how did they have this much lore? Like there must be like one guy there, and he's just like constantly writing lore all day long. Like.
Everything that pops in his head, I'll write this down, and then there's somebody else beside him, like connecting the dots. Like, this baby could go here.
All right, Gary, explain it again.
He's in like a little cloakroom. Go ask Gary about this. What's he been doing?
They temper a lot with like religion as well. Like, you look at religion now, they have like their own sort of religion in the game, which kind of replicates a lot of religions like in the real world. I'd highly recommend people play it.
Well, there's your recommendations, guys.
Yeah.
2 down. Okay, we'll move on. We've spoken a lot about Bloodborne now. This is like a Bloodborne appreciation video at this point. Nathan?
Okay, well, it was a very difficult question, because Dan alluded to the fact that, recency bias does come into play, that you kind of forget maybe just how involved you were with certain games, or just how much you thoroughly enjoyed it, but like 5 years ago, that you almost can't relate to it in the same way. So I had to kind of really think, okay, like, what game just absolutely enthralled me that like I just couldn't put down? And on the PS4, there was just one game that just did that, and it may not be a niche game, but it has to be The Witcher 3. So The Witcher 3 was a game that I heard all the rave reviews about, and my girlfriend's younger brother got it for free from his mum because the customer didn't want it in the shop. There is some kind of backstory there that I don't understand. So he's like, oh, do you want this because I won't play it? And I'm like, oh, well, I was thinking of maybe trying it, so I'll give it a go. First 2-3 hours, I was kind of like, I don't see the fuss. I just don't get it. And something just kind of clicked when I got to like Novigrad. And it was all I played for the next 4.5 months.
Wow.
And it, I think there's a reason it is so acclaimed, but for me personally, it was just like the world was so well realized, the characters were deep and engaging and quite just human. Like, they were flawed. There wasn't necessarily a directly like, this is the good way, this is the bad way. The world was really interesting just to kind of be in, just to explore. Gwent, at a point, it essentially became a Gwent machine, my PS4, and I'm like, okay, I like this game. If the card game is amazing, that whole side quest by being a Witcher is a bit bizarre though. Like, it literally became the game, and then the quest, the Gwent competition, like, that was tied in with that mini game was just stellar. It's like one of the best missions and go like 4 or 5 different ways. And then on top of it, the DLC is just the best example of how damn good DLC can be if the developers put time into it. So Blood and Wine introduced this just artistically stunning, almost like south of France area into the world. Hearts of Stone was just this extremely well told story with just such memorable characters. So when you put it all together into one Game of the Year edition, I mean, what more could you possibly want? Now, you could say, okay, the combat might be the little weak point in it, that it's not too deep. But as a complete package, it just does so many things just supremely well. And I still think in 4 or 5 years, if you were to load up The Witcher, it will still play well. I think it's going to age pretty well, aside from maybe the combat. So that was just the game that just I kept coming back to, because I just remember it became just my routine. I'd come home from work and I'd just get absorbed in it for 3 or 4 hours in the evening, and at the weekends, just that's what I played, and I didn't play anything else.
Well,
so that would be my pick. Plus,
the regular viewers of the Platinum podcast know that a Witcher 3 is always a win.
It is.
When it
definitely is.
in the podcast.
Like, I hate to be so obvious. Like, that's the thing. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do a real, like, avant-garde kind of, like, hipster, approach. Where it's like, yeah, that second Avengers DLC, that was...
While drinking a pale ale.
Yeah.
And The Witcher is really interesting as well, because it's the third installment, but no one has played the first two. It's like I have them on Steam, and because actually funny, I used to love the Baldur's Gate series, and then Baldur's Gate had a really good entry in the PS2 called Dark Alliance, and then they were going to make a third Dark Alliance, and instead of making it, they sold the rights to CD Projekt Red, who went on to make The Witcher 1. So I was following that at the time, and I played it, and it's pretty good. Like, it's a good RPG. And then the second one came out, and I had it on PC. I actually have the special edition for The Witcher 2 on the PC, and it's a good game. It's very
Witcher 2 is good.
Yeah. But it's nothing.
agreed.
It's nothing like The Witcher 3. They just
good.
turned
RPG.
from like a really good studio into like a
Stellar.
world class studio in the space of one game.
Yeah, so The Witcher would be my go-to. Now, the honorable mention, like, I kind of had two in mind for various reasons, but I'll probably have to go with Spider-Man. And the reason I'm going to go with Spider-Man, it's not for any kind of deep reason. It's just fun as hell. And it's just when a video game is just that simple, and just getting around the world is just a little joy in itself. It's just doing something right. And yes, I could break it down and go, okay, some of the kind of little tasks you had to do got a bit repetitive, saving people. It's like, okay, whatever, But it was just, again, just a beautifully told story. Like, it's just a really good Spider-Man story. I love the fact that they aged up Peter Parker a bit, and that opens up kind of new storyline possibilities. I like what they did with Miles Morales.
Yeah.
The voice acting was superb, and just graphically it was fantastic. The web swinging mechanics were just on point. So it and the combat as well, it was kind of like as smooth as Arkham, and you had all the gadgets, and look, sometimes just games just have to be fun, and sometimes just simple.
I agree.
And when it's just done to that level of quality, I mean,
it's a system
you just
seller
have
as
to.
well.
It is.
It's a system seller, yeah. So
sure.
I know my picks were kind of more like not really controversial picks, but I just have to say, look, they're just objectively good games. And the other one I was just quickly before I'll pass over to you, Lewis. Just the other one I was contemplating saying was Death Stranding. And just quickly, it was because it actually made a point of making traversing the world an engaging, interesting experience, as opposed to, even The Witcher 3, which I picked as the game of the generation, you might glaze over because you don't necessarily need to pay so much attention to the environment. It's a disease of open world games where it's kind of get from point A to point B and nothing really interesting happens in between. Death Stranding was completely focused on that in between. So you could rest when you got to A and B, and everything happened in the space in between. And I just have to say that I think that it may not be the best game, but I think that formula is going to be taken from it and built upon. And I'd say in years to come, that'll be looked at as kind of like a very influential game in how I kind of approached just navigating the world, that you need to be conscious. And you need to be aware of every single step.
Pre-prepare.
Yeah.
So just from a gameplay mechanic, the fact that they focused on that kind of in-between that is often just kind of glaze over time for the gamer, it just deserves a kind of acknowledgement.
Yes, I agree. I think it's probably the first game I'm probably going to one of the only games on this generation where Hideo Kojima has not only has he made a new IP, which we all say is not enough of, he's actually created his own gameplay. He's created this gameplay, and it's so hard to create gameplay today because everything's been done before. Most games, even like Ghost of Tsushima, which is probably going to get a Game of the Year, fits very well into little boxes as to what you have to include to make a good game.
Yeah.
But Death Stranding doesn't. It's completely just different to anything that anyone's ever played.
It's remarkable that it was even made. And I just think that you can dislike the game, but a certain appreciation has to be given to it for the fact that it's trying to rework what a game can be. And just broadly, like, even if you dislike Metal Gear, every single game brought in like a very unique gameplay mechanic. That's what I love about the series, that they always try to revolutionize and kind of change up just mechanics in games. And I think that is Kojima's greatest strength, because it sure as hell isn't coherent storytelling.
No.
I can't wait to see what he does with the haptic triggers, because that'd be really cool in Death Stranding, because they're supposed to be
I
really
can imagine
good.
like hammock mechanics for some reason. Just he's going to focus like 200 hours and just hammock, to be able to swing realistic. But no, like, so I just wanted to make a mention of Death Stranding, that kind of I just appreciate what Kojima.
When you brought it up,
on.
I kind of find it a bit, but then when you kind of, when you
Break
get
it
your point
down.
across, you really, it's true. Like, I'm only thinking of Death Stranding because of how much it drags on. Like, it's a very, very slow-paced game, even with the little things happening in between. Like, it's a very, very slow-paced game. I'm still yet to finish it. But what I have played, and like the story developing and everything, and even the characters developing, it does get you hooked. And it's just the fact you have to kind of think before you go ahead. Like, when you go out into the world, in a lot of games you already have like everything, like you got your swords, or you got your equipment, or you got everything pre-prepared. With Death Stranding, it's not quite like that. You have to look at how the weather can turn, you have to look at what you can encounter, how deteriorated your gear is, have an extra pair of shoes. Like, I found that out the hard way. Like, if you run out of shoes in that world, God help you in getting to your next destination. You're gonna limp all the way there, and it's gonna drag.
That's really interesting, because like it makes you prepare things that other games give you for granted.
Yeah.
Make you take for granted.
Yeah,
It's
Like,
like
you just don't
literally
even
like,
think about it.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think about like making sure your horse is fed if you're on a horse, or I mean, I suppose Days Gone makes you have fuel, but it's like, other than that, it's like, you're right. Like, it's just so complex. It's like, and it's that dynamic element as well.
Yeah, it's like
things change.
In other
Even-
games, you need to
even-
be prepared when you get to that point B, because something's going to happen when you get to the point B. So
Yeah.
I just thought it was an interesting dynamic that it
No,
was.
I
in
think
the
it's
games.
funny that Nathan
Really
said
is.
that he was going to do nothing avant-garde, and then he hits us with Death Stranding.
Yeah, just
So the third one.
Where's my wine? Where's
Yeah,
my
your wine.
wine?
you need some like
I'm done. We'll pass.
Well, have you
over.
got a blazer you can just throw on quickly, because it would really just.
I have a collection of blazers, sir.
Which one? Okay, well, we're on an hour now, so I'll discuss mine now. So
Okay, let's.
I'm interested about this, because you play like the most, sometimes
Someone's
like the most
calling me.
disgusting trolling
Yeah.
games.
I've played some
I'm
horrible games.
so
this year.
curious to see what your generation games are.
Well, we are going to do a video on Game of the Year, and that'll be interesting, because I haven't played a good game that's come out this year, in my opinion. Well, Last of Us, obviously, but I haven't played a 10 out of 10 this year, but
Okay.
I have played some 10 out of 10 games across the generation. Now, I'm going to say 3 because I'll
You're
tell
the
you why in a
host.
second.
Because I'm the host.
Because I'm the host.
So
You're the
screw
I'm
you.
the
host,
host,
yeah.
no, it's my podcast. I do what I want. No, because they've all been said in different forms. So my special mention is going to be Witcher 3. I speak on the podcast all the time.
Yeah.
I really, really love The Witcher. I haven't played it. I think I played it in 2016 or 17. Blew my mind. I think actually the combat is pretty good. It probably is the weakest part of the game, but I think it definitely is as good as other games.
It's decent.
Yeah, it's decent. and-
It's simple enough to get into, I think. It's not overly complicated, and you don't have to overly think of like how to get used to.
Exactly.
It's your generic combat. You got a
Yeah.
heavy attack, a light attack, and you got your spells. And
The spells
Yeah.
make
Pretty
it
much it.
stand out, I think. I love the way you can
Yeah,
use
I agree.
the spells.
I really like
That's
that.
true.
And
Yeah.
and as well, I really like the hunting. So like the Witcher contracts. I think
yes,
I just think it was so unique in the sense
great.
that you can go and hack this griffin to bits. But if you read about it first
Yeah.
and you realise that it's weak to certain types of spells, certain types of like coatings for your weapons, it completely changes the way you face these monsters. And I'd never ever played a game that made us plan that much before. Obviously, I know we just spoke about the complexity of Death Stranding, but for me, back in 2016 when I played Witcher, I thought that was like just so clever and just so fun to actually have to read about it.
It
I
is
used to always
good,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
You can
Like,
just
instead of
imagine. You can just imagine Geralt looking at this werewolf like oiling his sword.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me a
And
second.
I remember,
The
and I remember
Netflix
the
is
launch
really
trailer.
good too.
Yes, it was. But I remember the specific trailer for The Witcher was when Geralt fights a vampire. Have you all seen it?
Yeah.
And then basically
that's the
he's
one
about
that
to die.
Blood and Wine,
And
I think.
Yeah, and he bites its neck, and then it realizes then the vampire dies because
Yeah.
Geralt's drank that certain potion.
Yeah.
And I remember when I watched that and then I played the game, I felt like a Witcher. It was one of the only games where I've actually felt
Feel like a
not-
Witcher.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
am actually this main character. Which then takes me on the TV show, which I think mostly is good. I think Geralt is brilliant. Henry Cavill, I love the guy. He's amazing, and I think he does really, really, really justice to the character. I think the stuff done with Ciri is hit and miss, but his Geralt stories are so good. And I've read the first 2 books. I haven't read all of them, and I think the series is basically the first 2 books, and I think it coincides well. And a lot of the side missions in The Witcher 3 coincide well with the books as well, and I think it's just really interesting that when I read the books I was like, oh, this was a side mission, this was a side quest, and it was all just so well connected. But that was my first mention, which I'm going to mention the other one because Dan obviously Nathan's already mentioned Witcher 3. So my other mention is God of War. I'm going to just quickly say that I think I hadn't played God of War really other than the first one on the PS2, so I didn't play them, and I think it is one of the best hack and slash games out there. It tells a really, really great story which has amazing character development for Kratos, and I think it just has great enemies, great villains. What's the enemy? What's the guy called?
Balder.
Balder, yeah. Balder is excellent.
He was like a very, like, I was probably expecting him to be an enemy, but I wouldn't expect him to be like the main
enemy. Yeah, I agree exactly.
I thought it was probably going to be like an introduction to this is how a boss fight works. But when like, I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I mean, you should have played it by now. But
yeah,
when the first fight ends the way it ends, you kind of think, all right, that's it, let's move on. Yeah. And then when he appears again and you hear him, somebody's like, the hell, this guy doing here?
I loved it. Was it? What's the head called? Mimir or something? Was it Mimir?
Mimir, yeah.
I just loved that how much he added to the story when he was always talking about Norse mythology all the time. It was like he was just giving you so much lore, and it was just like it helped build up the world so much.
And it was just funny as well. It was
it was. Yeah,
the twist
it was
at
amusing.
the end was great too, I thought.
Yeah, exactly. The twist, and
right.
I just like the end fight as well. The last hour is just one of the best endings to a game I've ever played.
It's epic.
Speaking of the ending though, what I particularly appreciate about it is that most God of War games end on this mad, you're fighting an enemy the size of the moon.
Yeah.
But I thought the bravest storytelling aspect of that game was the fact that it ended peacefully. That you go up and you throw the ashes, and I thought that was such like a odd note for a God of War game to end on. Like it didn't end in this bloody, violent, kind of massive fight against the gods. It was just you and Atreus just kind of reaching the end of the goal, and it just kind of ended on a quiet note, and I thought that was very fascinating.
You feel like your journey's finished. You feel like the game is truly concluded.
And then the epilogue.
Yeah, the epilogue.
Yeah, then the epilogue happens.
And as well, on it as well, I mean, I haven't played a lot of God of War, but so I'm not entirely sure of weapon styles and stuff, but the Leviathan Axe and the Blades of Chaos, they were really, really great weapons. And the fact that as well you could fight without weapons as well.
Yeah.
It was just so complex. It was such a complex fighting style, and I just think we hadn't really seen anything like it.
The axe is always so satisfying.
Yeah, as well, exactly.
It never got old.
No, you didn't.
No.
It was amazing. And it had such a good customization style for the combat as well. So it was like was it the L1 and the R1 buttons you could assign, and there was like tens of different like special moves you could do, which really changed the way you played the game. Yeah, the runes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did admittedly only use about 5 throughout the whole game because I found some that fit my play style.
Yeah.
But that was the thing; you had your options as to how you wanted to play the game.
Oh yeah, and there's so many as well. There's countless amount of them.
Exactly.
I did try and experiment with a lot of them, but I don't think I even hit a dent. There's so many. Yeah, very good choices. What's the last one?
Okay, so this is actually my game of the year. So if you hadn't have said Witcher, I would have said Witcher is my actual, it's my runner-up, not my game of the year. So my game of the year, in fact, has to be
Avengers.
Avengers. It is Avengers. No, it is Insomniac Spider-Man 2018. Similarly to what Nathan, what you said with Witcher 3, it's mainstreamy. It is, yes. And I think for me, I'm a massive Spider-Man fan. Like I am. I preferred. I would say maybe this now. My love of gaming and comics is very, very leveled. But I'd probably say up until maybe 2018, I've preferred the comics more than I preferred gaming, particularly Spider-Man. And I think playing Spider-Man, I can only describe it, is when I first played it is actual euphoria. Like I think in my life, when I actually think about it, there's only a few times where I felt like completely bemused at something, and that probably is Avengers Endgame, and when I first started playing Spider-Man, the first hour of Spider-Man, I remember playing like this game is sensational to play as. Yeah. The web mechanics are amazing. Yes, the combat it's really refined, but it is just a rip-off of Arkham Asylum. It's just a grown-up version of that.
The thing is, though, they make it like, I think a lot of superhero movies, they kind of dumb down the hero.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make you feel like a hero anymore. Like when you're Spider-Man, you want to feel like Spider-Man. Spider-Man is OP. End of.
Yeah.
Like you can't deny it. He's got super strength. He's got senses. He's just a beast. It's going to be really hard to defeat Spider-Man. And so when you throw Spider-Man like in the early games and you get these thugs that are like beating him up, it's like it wouldn't work like that.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
And as well, going to the story as well, I would probably go as far to say that it is the best Spider-Man that has been told ever in any sort of media, including, well, obviously you can't really state for the comics, but I have this issue with comics, not to be overly pretentious, but I feel like a lot of the time, over the past 10 years, 20 years, I feel like the people who write for them aren't that good, and I feel like the characters suffer because some of the stories are a bit like repetitive and bland, and I understand it's because of comics, you have to retell the same stories. I do get that, but I feel like that's what the comics suffer, and I think the MCU stuff suffers from the fact that they've tried to make him a child and all this other stuff, and I think this is actually the best version of Spider-Man I personally think I've ever seen. As a die-hard Spider-Man fan, it is the best Spider-Man.
As a die-hard Spider-Man fan, I do have a soft spot for the 90s animated series Spider-Man.
I do as well.
One, and also the Spider-Man game from 2000 that was from Neversoft. That was a lovely ode to the comics. You could tell that they really revered it.
Oh yes, of course, for the PlayStation 1.
Yeah, so up until Insomniac's game, that was the absolute best portrayal of Spider-Man in the realm of video games anyway. For me, just as another diehard Spidey fan.
I love Web of Shadows, to be fair. Like, I really loved Web of Shadows. I think Web of Shadows has had the most unique Spider-Man combat with the whole, like, did anybody play it? It had this like lock-on system where basically it was like, basically Spider-Man, he didn't fight on the ground. You never fought on the ground, and it's a really weird mechanic, but like, you would like be in the air for half the time that you're actually fighting, if not more. Because you just bounce from enemy to enemy, be thrown enemies, and like it was really, really acrobatic, and it was like more so than Insomniac's. Because Insomniac, you can dodge and flip, but this game is literally like you would like jump on an enemy, like bounce off them, you'd lock on the next one, and you could like do the same or throw them or vault them and stuff. It was really, for its time, 2007, it was like next level. But but then again, that was like a good story. The combat was the best part of it.
It was like if Spider-Man got bit by a flea.
Yeah, exactly.
Help! Exactly. I can't stop.
Yeah. But again, that wasn't the best Spider-Man. That was just the best combat.
Yeah.
Whereas I think this game has been the Spider-Man, the story to tell with Miles. And yes, the parts where you play as Miles and Mary Jane are a bit all over the place. But actually, like with Aunt May and stuff and everything that happens, it's just such a good story. And with Doc Ock as well, like you get a lot of time with him. And I think it's told really well. I don't like the new Spider-Man face. I know I said I wasn't going to say too much about it, but I've seen a lot of the gameplay now. I don't like it. It seems like a really bad decision.
It's just jarring.
I saw the comparison between like the PS5 and PS4. And the lighting's better. The graphics do look a little bit better, more refined. But the face just doesn't fit, I don't think.
For me, it's the fact that I can't relate the experiences of the first game to that face. It's just that simple because you just associate and emotionally attach to just the original character because that's how you experienced the story. Yeah. So to kind of retroactively refit the face, it just doesn't. Like, I think the face looks good. That's the thing, but I can't associate it with Peter in the first game, and that's just the issue. That there's just the emotional disconnect.
Yeah, what they did was picture the Sam Raimi trilogy. But with Andrew Garfield's face instead of Tobey Maguire's. It's basically what they've done with the game.
I think on that though, I am going to replay. I think when I'm going to buy the Ultimate Edition of Miles Morales, and I'm going to play the Ultimate Edition first. So I think doing it that way might help me sort of like prepare, like
Get used to it.
accept Miles Morales'
Emotionally
story
prepare.
more. Yeah, yeah, like prepare like a 50-hour, 80-hour preparation for the change, because I think they've done it to bring a new audience. It's weird that he's 23 or 24 and he looks like he's 15, and Miles Morales is 15 but looks like he's like 20.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah,
what
I
is the
agree with
audience here? What is going on?
Well,
Like,
he looks very like
so
Tom Holland now. So I
Yes,
think
he
they're
does.
maybe just trying to homogenize Spider-Man to just look like Tom Holland moving forward.
pretty
Yeah.
much. But that doesn't
Yeah.
take away anyway that Spider-Man for me is the best game of the generation. It was just a game I wasn't expecting to come out, and it is just such a complete Spider-Man game. It is the best superhero game, and as well, seeing as well how bad Avengers is, that shows how bad that shows that superhero games, just because the game's superhero, it doesn't carry the game. If the game isn't good, then it still wouldn't be fun. And I would probably not be using, if it was a terrible Spider-Man game, I wouldn't be seeing it now as my game of the generation, because I played terrible superhero games alongside it. And I think that shows that actually, although it's a Spider-Man game, it's also a great game as well.
Yeah,
People
I
can
think
play
you can
it.
tell Insomniac cared. They just
Yeah.
cared about the source material.
On top of that as well, let's just touch on the fact that it only came out for one platform, and it was still like the highest selling superhero game of all time.
Yeah.
On
And
one platform alone. That's
yeah.
insane.
And they had amazing fan service as well, with all the costumes and
Yes.
the Sam
Oh,
Raimi
yeah.
costume.
Yes.
Like, props to them for that. That was really, really
The
awesome of
Homecoming.
them.
That was like a
Yeah.
soldier
Homecoming,
school
yeah.
style
They released the
of kind of, unlocking nice outfits throughout the thing. That's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
anymore.
And it was free.
And
Yeah.
not just that, like every outfit actually has a purpose. It's not just
Yeah.
outfits just for the cosmetics. Like you got the outfits with the power ups, which like
Yeah,
in the
it's
future
cool.
then you can like swap them around.
And you can still pick and mix then as
Yeah.
well, so you can
Which
get the
is-
aesthetic
yeah.
of whatever suit you want, but you
Yeah.
can then apply powers. It's just so good.
It is
It's just so well done. It's literally just made like the fan service completely. I mean, the DLC is a bit hit and miss, but for me, like, I would have been happy. I loved that game so much. I would have been happy to just play paid every 6 months for another bit of DLC. Like, I think the mechanics were so good that it was just I was just ready for it, and I think I'll be ready for Miles Morales when I play it, because I'm not going to play it until the new year.
And for
So, like,
platinum,
I think
for
as well
platinum
with-
hunters.
Yeah, I was about to say exactly. I think it's possibly one of the most important games for introducing new people to the trophy system, because
Yeah.
it's such a. We've talked about this before. It's like it's really accessible.
Video coming
game.
up.
You
Yeah.
can actually, you can earn those, you can earn those trophies, and you can decide. Oh, I think I'll go for the platinum now. Even like at the very end of the game, you're never
Yeah.
locked out of it. So
Yeah.
then, like if you look on like say Reddit, for example, on the trophy subreddit, it's nearly a meme at this point that here's my Uncle Ben, platinum screenshot.
screenshot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So like but it's fantastic that it's that kind of a game that number one has sold like the system for a lot of people, and it then gets people interested into trophies, because you know
Yeah.
that's what we're all about, I suppose.
Yeah, so many people have said, like, in my comments and stuff, that it's their first platinum trophy.
Yeah.
And I think, like, although we're all pretty seasoned veteran trophy hunters, I don't actually
We're
think
grizzled.
a lot of we're grizzled, we're hardened to the times. A lot of my viewers aren't. They're more like casual, which is absolutely fine. It's probably it is the healthiest way to play games, and I think a lot of people love Spider-Man and for that as well, because it got them into trophies and got
Yeah.
them experiencing how fun they can be. So
It's
props to
fun.
them for that
It's
as well.
fun and easy.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's fun, easy. There's no missables. There's no like stupid things you need to do, like look under a skirt 10 times.
Nier
It'd be a very
Automata-
different
Nier-
Spider-Man game.
Yeah, Joel's just told me what he did today, I think.
You can just use the web. Sure.
That's a near automata.
That is a Nier
trophy.
Automata.
Yeah.
That popped into my head now. Like, I did it voluntarily. I didn't even know it was a trophy.
And you got
When it unlocked, you're like, how did they know?
they're watching me.
But yeah, I mean, I think maybe Spider-Man did for the future games did kind of like establish a trophy list that's accessible to everyone, and it maybe encourages more people to play the game longer because of how easy it can be and how fun it can be.
Absolutely. And the collectibles weren't lazy. Like, as
No,
a long-term Spider-Man
definitely
fan,
not.
I loved finding them because they were just
Easter
all
eggs.
little Easter
Yeah,
eggs
yeah,
or
I
references.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like light a candle, boom, done. Like Sleeping Dogs, you light the shrine, and it goes like,
Yeah.
just monotonous.
I'll have to hack a box 50 times in Sleeping Dogs. Every single time you go to find one of these like little supply boxes, you have to go and you have to hack it individually, and it's like the slowest thing. So it's like not only do you have to go and find them, you then have to hack them.
I forgot about that.
It's like it's running on Windows 95.
Yeah.
But I think they're like between everyone, there's some fantastic games.
Yeah.
I agree. So
I think
we've got
forgotten games as well.
Yeah. So it's interesting that there's been no games this year or 2019.
Well,
so
Death Stranding kind of.
2019, yeah, of course.
Surprised no Red Dead Redemption.
I thought about that, to be honest.
Me too, yeah,
but
definitely.
I think the Platinum just drained all the fun I had from that game.
Yeah, I think yeah, it was just
yeah.
Spider-Man, and The Witcher, as I said, just the sheer joy, and just I was completely engrossed by both of them. So I think I just have to be honest with myself. It's like they're not like cool hip picks. They're quite mainstream, as Lewis said. But look, I don't care. It's what I enjoyed.
I agree. No, well, it's funny how Dan and Joel have chose pretty much the same games, and we've chose pretty much the same games on our side. So we're the more mainstream side, despite our more I was to say more hipster look, but then Joel does have his hair tied back, so maybe we're all hipster in our own little ways. I was going to say something, but I forgot. It's gone from me. Oh, I was going to say actually on Red Dead quickly. So I've been playing The Last of Us Part 2, obviously, I've said earlier. Like 3.5 hours ago.
3 days ago.
There you go, days ago. I didn't have stubble before. My hair was short when we started this podcast. And I was trying to think, like, is there a more adventurous story or a story that gets things right the most? And I was racking my brain, and I came on Red Dead 2 thinking that actually that is the most, like, has the best character development I've seen on a video game. And I think that it probably is one of the best stories, with more traditional best stories. Like,
it's
best
true.
villains, best main characters, best progression as to what's going on. I think it's pretty complete in terms of a story game.
Yeah, some complex moral kind of storytelling as well.
To be honest, I thought someone else was going to say it because we've discussed it on the previous podcast. Last time we were here, we discussed Red Dead quite a bit. So I thought that someone was going to do it. So I'd probably have maybe replaced Resi 7 with Red Dead had I known no one else was going to pick it. But
no take back, Stan.
Yeah, no, I know, and I'm not taking it back. No way. No.
You'll ruin the integrity of the list.
Yeah, exactly.
Ethan earned it.
Red Dead 2 is
the only reason I didn't pick Red Dead was because it's not, although it was incredibly good, it wasn't really something that kind of changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, gameplay-wise and everything, it is still quite a generic. It's still a GTA Red Dead game, like, gameplay-wise. It's just the world is a lot more filled, and, like...
Yeah.
The characters have a bit more purpose, like, even the people just walking around. But I don't think it really changed a lot. I think what it did is it grabbed what was already existing, and it just made it better.
I would say on that, it's probably like Red Dead. To be fair, Rockstar are pretty famous for this. Like, they make, like, the peak of mainstream storytelling. That's what Red Dead 2 is. It's like one of the best generic stories. It's not generic. It's unfair to call it generic, but it's like a story that has been told before, but it's like one of the best stories, the best ways of telling a story that's been told before. Yeah, maybe Red Dead 2 can be our group.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I
agree
with that. I think Red Dead, and maybe Ghost of Tsushima to the same degree. Because they have such long development times, say Sucker Punch were working on Ghost of Tsushima for the entire generation, and Rockstar had been working on Red Dead for, half a decade at least. Yeah. So like a lot of, sometimes maybe the downfall to that is that they don't get to take the inspiration from what happened in the middle of that time, because a lot of what they would have set in stone at the start has already been there, so they don't get to reap the benefits of the whole generation there,
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's true.
Okay, guys, I think we've had a really good chat today. I think we'll round it up because we're on about an hour and 15. We'll not talk about our trophy topics or other topics today because I think they were not as interesting as this, so I've just let this free flow. This has been a really good conversation, so what we'll say is, to everyone viewing this, what is your game of the generation? Be really interested to see if it is similar to what we've said. So we've said Spider-Man, Witcher 3, Bloodborne and Sekiro. Special mentions to God of War, Red Dead 2, Resident Evil, and I think that's it, isn't it?
think so.
So we'll be interested to see if your games align.
Death Stranding.
Death Stranding as well. Death Stranding as well.
I forget.
So Dan, Nathan, Platchums, thank you very much for being on. I really appreciate your time,
Thanks
guys.
for having us, yeah, as always.
And thanks to you as well, Joel. Links to everyone's channels will be down below, so feel free to check them out if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, guys, and take it easy.
Bye.